American deep state, fantasy advanced only by conspiracy theorists or Washington reality. At a recent Federalist Society dinner in our nation's capital, Attorney General William Barr said an avalanche of subpoenas and constant attempts to derail Trump administration appointments only serve to incapacitate the executive branch. He stopped short of calling what is happening in Washington a political coup, but he suggested forces are engaged in a war to cripple by any means necessary a duly elected government.
Now, resistance is the language used to describe insurgency against rule imposed by an occupying military power. It obviously connotes that the government is not legitimate. This is a very dangerous and indeed incendiary notion to import into the politics of a democratic republic.
Joining us is former CIA analyst, author, and adjunct professor at Georgetown University, Dr. Michael Schur. Dr. Schur, what do you think of the Attorney General's comments?
I think Mr. Barr is exactly right, sir. And I would, it may be a coup, but it seems to me it's more the case that it's an insurrection.
Insurrection. An organized uprising against an authoritative body. After an insurrection removed the brutal royal family from power, a democratic government led the country. If the insurrection against the tyrant fails, many innocent people will continue to be killed on a daily basis.
The federal government, at least the executive branch, is being denied the ability to execute its responsibilities, whether it's here in Washington or in places like Seattle and Portland, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, where under the Supremacy Clause, Washington is very clearly responsible for immigration. There is much more disruption, much more insurrection in this country than Lincoln faced, or insurrection in this country than Lincoln faced until the Confederates fired at Fort Sumter. And so it's really a staggering position to be again in this position 100 or almost 160 years later.
Yes, I mean, to have the Attorney General of the United States make these type of comments, he must be gravely concerned. Now, he says there's a resistance that has a strategy and is using every tool available to sabotage the executive branch. I'm assuming this includes impeachment. So what do you think of the hearings in the House?
What we've heard so far in these sessions has been, I'm very offended because the president didn't listen to my advice. And certainly in ignorance, both in the Congress and in the testimony. When the Constitution says bribery, the founders were talking about the president accepting bribes.
Do you think there was any bribery of Ukraine on the part of this president? How about Joe and Hunter Biden and Burisma Holdings?
Well, you know, so that's the point, I think. If the president of the United States could grab something out of the Ukraine in return for our money that was really worth something to the United States, I think the American people as a whole would be very happy with that. And if it happened to involve Biden and his son, and they were actually criminally involved, the president would be praised, I would think, for preventing someone like him from having a chance to get into the White House. When I say him, I mean Joe Biden. And what they're doing is, as Mr. Barr said, trying to tear down the institutions of this country. They're not the loyal opposition. They are an infestation of globalists who want to deny nationality to the United States and blend us in with the rest of the world.
The IG's FISA report may be released publicly any day now. So, Michael, what do you expect it'll reveal?
Well, if America is to be, again, a land of rule of law and equality before the law, there'll be suggested indictments for John Brennan, Susan Rice, Clapper, all those FBI characters, Comey and McCabe and Strzok and the rest of them. And also, I would think, clearly Obama is involved in this up to his neck, because clearly this was run from the Oval Office by Barack Obama in an attempt to defeat candidate Trump and an ongoing a threat through insurrection or coup. You know, it's up to you to choose the word, since the president was inaugurated.
Now, this all sounds like conspiracy.
Clearly the planning on how to take care of it, the insurance policy, all of that stuff, that's clearly a conspiracy. Sometimes there are conspiracies, sir.
A U.S. Senator lays out a Catholic vision for the economy. Marco Rubio says a disordered economy has left many Americans forgotten. To fix the problem, the Florida Republican proposes what he calls common good capitalism. What he calls common good capitalism. It focuses on the good of all people and promotes dignified work. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi was there for the speech. Jason?
White, it's not often you hear lawmakers here on Capitol Hill talking about papal teaching dating back 128 years. Papal teaching dating back 128 years. But that's exactly what Marco Rubio is pointing to deal with the country's current problems. He says there's pockets of despair throughout the country, so he's turning to Pope Leo XIII's classic encyclical Rerum Novarum.